Welcome to Happy Hour with Haley. I'm Haley Chura, and this week I am joined by another co-host of our rotating cast of characters, Samantha Rothberg. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, since you are going to be a recurring co-host on this show, we do need to tell everyone who you are and how you know me. So, yes, let's start with that. How did we first meet?
Okay. Well, you started as my coach. I'd been racing triathlon for a couple of years and loved my coach, but really wanted a female coach. And so I had listened to the Iron Women podcast, and you had a podcast about changing coaches. You had somebody else on, and I was like, oh my God, this is the perfect time to try a new coach. We had a call, and you were like, we'll probably never meet in real life. I live in Montana and you live in New York, but I'm really happy to coach you. And I was like, great, we'll talk. We'll, catch up on text or on training peaks. And I know she has my back and we'll never meet, and that's fine. And then two things happened. One was we each fell off our bikes, sadly, around the same time. And the other was the Eras Tour. And both of those things kind of collided at the same time for us to have a little bit of a YOLO moment to meet up and go to the Eras Tour with our other friend, Katie, in Vancouver in December of, would that have been 2024?
Yeah.
24.
Yes. So, okay, I need to say this for a second because we met for the first time at the Eras Tour. This is the Taylor Swift biggest tour ever. We met for the first time at the Eras Tour. And you are actually not the first person that I have done that with, that I have met for the first time at attending the Eras Tour with them. I first did it in 2023 with my good friend Megan, who's we had planned, we had never met in person. We kind of had become friends through the pandemic, and then we were like, if Taylor Swift ever tours, we'll go. And so we did. I met her for the first time the day before the concert, and the same thing, and then I did it again.
But you had
with you.
But you guys all had tickets. I did not have a ticket. So
you did.
what happened?
You did come to the Eras Tour with no
Yeah.
ticket and not having met any of the people that you were going to go to the show with.
Right. You were like, hey, my athlete has tickets. Do you want to fly to another country across the continent and come to Vancouver and stay with us?
To be clear, we were both a little bit sad in this time because, as you
We were
mentioned,
so sad.
we had both had bike crashes. We were both injured. You had crashed after a race and broken your teeth. I had crashed during T100 Vegas and broken my hand. And so we were both a little bit sad. And so it was a YOLO moment where it was like Taylor Swift is playing in Vancouver. Our good friend Katie had tickets, and I was like, oh, just come, see if you can get a ticket and come to the show. We're sitting behind the stage. Katie and I were sitting behind the stage. So the bar was pretty low, and it was the last opportunity to see Taylor in concert.
And we did it. We pulled the whole weekend off. I was really impressed with us. I managed to still get a ticket, and I managed to sit with you guys.
So you came to the Eras Tour without a ticket. Are you the type of person who just takes big risks? I mean, or are you someone who just trusts your coach so much that you're like, she'll figure this out?
A little bit of both. I think if there is a plane ride involved, I'm there. I love to travel. I will do anything for an experience. But I do trust my coach so much that I did sign up for an Ironman because I looked at you and said, do you think I can do this in 12 weeks or 16 weeks? And you said yes. So a little bit of both. And I feel like Taylor Swift is a safe space, to use that term, to be a little adventurous. The worst that happens is I was going to get a ticket and sit with people I didn't know and have fun in Vancouver. But I feel like triathlon does take a little bit of adventure. It's a lot of traveling to races. It's a lot of meeting new people, especially in the age group category. It's not one group of people that's traveling around. You meet different people depending on if you're doing, a USAT race, a nationals race, if you're going to world triathlon events. So I think it does take that type of personality for sure. And I do trust my coach. So a little bit of both.
I don't know if that was a smart idea, but it worked out okay. Like you said, you got a ticket, you got in the show. We even got to sit together. Everything did work out great. We watched the show from behind the stage, and it was fantastic. And as I alluded in the Katie Trescentorni episode a few weeks ago, we did start talking about starting a podcast. My previous show is wrapping up, and it was one of those things where like, oh, we could just do this on our own. And it's taken me a year to finally do that. But here we are. But in addition to just being my athlete, not that that's a just, all of my athletes are incredible people. The ones that trust me enough to sign up for races or go to concerts, and even the ones who don't, they are all incredible. But you also work as a personal trainer.
I do. So I live out east, which is the Hamptons, and I moved out here during COVID. So I train people. I mostly go to their houses. It's a little quiet right now, but in the summer it's hectic and crazy and fun, and I get to meet everybody's whole families. I train people from kids who want to get on the varsity team once school starts again to adults to their 70s and 80s. Some of them just want to play with their grandkids. Others are still playing golf, playing pickleball, playing tennis. So I work with them for their activities of daily living, but also for their sports-specific training, which I absolutely love. And sometimes I train whole families. So I'll show up to a house and I'll be there for 3 or 4 hours, and everybody's program is different. And it's really fun to see what each of their goals are and to write their individual programs and also just really get to know them as people. It's really fun to actually get those texts saying that they, hit the golf ball farther or they made the varsity team or whatever it was that they needed to do to see what I could do in the weight room and help them get to their goals.
What is the fanciest home gym you've ever seen? You don't have to say who, but
Too
how
many
big was
NDAs,
this
Haley.
gym? You're just saying how big a gym is. Are they
Imagine,
big or?
imagine a whole house and just the basement. But it's really interesting because I'm like, you are not a triathlete, because I would be like, you could put a kicker here and you could put 3 treadmills here and you could have a giant screen for all of your Zwift stuff. But I would say the whole space of the house. I'm really bad with square feet, but if you imagine a very, very large family home, the whole basement, with
All just gym
sauna and
equipment.
steam room and yeah,
Saunas, steam room, cold
and
plunge. They
cold
got it all.
plunges. Exactly, exactly. I kept saying that they should be putting in one of those endless pools. I secretly want to turn everybody into a triathlete, and I will evangelize for triathlon, but it hasn't worked for a lot of people.
So none of your clients have an endless pool yet, or like
Not yet.
no one that would allow you to also then like use it. Maybe if you
See,
finish a
that's
session a few minutes early.
I have swam off some clients' docks, which is amazing because you just get in and you do your thing. But I always wear a buoy for that one because people can be a little crazy on the jet skis.
Yeah, yeah, I would believe that in that neck of the woods. But and you mentioned your background. You are one of my athletes. You are a triathlete. You mentioned signing up for your first Ironman. We are going to talk more about that later. But what is your background in sport?
So I was not an athlete growing up. I was an equestrian. So I loved to horseback ride. I would jump over fences and I rode my freshman year in college. We had a club team. But I was the kid who would actually cut gym class to go study for my AP classes. And so most people have the recurring nightmare where they have to go back to school because they didn't study for the test. I have about every 6 weeks, I have to go back to school because I cut gym and I have to go back to gym class. And that is my recurring nightmare. And the irony is not lost on me.
Wait, you
Yeah,
still have this nightmare even though you exercise for fun now?
for so much fun. I pay so much money to exercise. I pay so much money. And that's my recurring nightmare. They're like, your high school degree, your undergrad degree, and your master's degree are all invalid because you have to go back to high school. And then it very much intersects
Okay,
with like
okay,
a
but you are
21 Jump
worried.
Street thing.
You are worried that like the like punishment is you lose your academic accolades.
I guess so, yeah. So there's a lot going on there. Like there's something in the DSM for sure that we can unpack later, but was not an athlete growing up. So all
Okay.
of this stuff, like the running, the swimming, I wouldn't say cycling is the most popular sport for kids, but there's a lot of people like you who grew up swimming or doing cross country. That was not me. If I could get out of the mile for the presidential fitness test, I was calling in sick that day.
And when did you start doing sports? Because I was not the one who got you to start doing
No,
sports or start doing triathlon.
I was in grad school. in London getting a master's in medieval art history. Because if I love anything, it's transferable skills. So I was like, great, this will set me up for work. Just really hone in on Viking art history. But what I realized when I was there was that I was not going to go on to the PhD program. And it was very much a stepping stone program. I would say 90% of the students who I was with, there were 5 in my cohort, but probably a couple hundred in the program overall, went on to get their PhD. So they all had to take classical Greek and Latin. And I decided I wasn't going to do that. And I walked by a Barry's boot camp, which I'd recognized from New York. And I walked in and I started going every single day. And those were the people that I became friends with. So that was my alarm clock because I only had class once a week. So it was, you would spend all day by yourself in the library and you wouldn't interact with anybody. And so I started going 8:20 in the morning, almost every day. And those were how I made friends, especially because a lot of people were like, oh, you don't want a PhD? We're going to look down on you. And so most of my English friends I actually met through working out. And then I moved back to the States and was working and living in New York, started working out at a gym at Equinox, and I got a trainer because I had realized that lifting weights was actually really fun. And I hated my job. I had interned in museums. I ended up in the for-profit art world. I was miserable, and I was really only happy when I was working out. And so I studied to become a trainer, realized I loved exercise science, and I loved to pick things up and put them down. Like there was nothing more fun than just lifting heavy things. And so I quit my job after a year, went from having a trainer at the gym to walking the floor at 5:30 in the morning, trying to pick up clients, which was very humbling and very challenging for an introvert like myself. Just really fell in love with teaching people how to lift. And I started competing in powerlifting. So I had that like very similar to bike bibs, like suit you would wear. And I would go to these competitions and I would squat, bench, and deadlift. And I had so much fun. And then a client once said to me, you are not happy. Your brain gets really angry. And I still train this client over 10 years later. If your brain is not chewing on something, it gets really angry. So I said, okay, I'm going to take swim lessons. So I reached out to a colleague and I started taking swimming lessons just to learn something new. And then a client of mine, a different one, had dared me to do a sprint triathlon. He was like, you used to do Soul Cycle, you're learning how to swim. Surely you can run 3 miles. I was like, joke's on you. Going back to the presidential fitness test, I can't even run a mile. But I trained and the whole race was a disaster, but the people were so kind and I fell in love with the sport. And since 2019, I've been triathloning.
Well, we are glad to have you in the triathlon space. And again, we are going to go into your progression through the sport from the sprint distances and running those first 5Ks to your plans for 2026. But before we do that, this is happy hour, and I do encourage guests to bring a beverage. And I think you're gonna be a little maybe disappointed with mine when I pull mine out. But who's going first? Should I go first?
Oh, yeah, you should
No,
go
you go
first.
first. You go first. Did
Hold
you
on.
bring a beverage?
I did. I did bring a beverage. And I wonder if you can understand the significance of this one. This is
A
a
Montauk.
Montauk Brewing beer, which is
Yes.
now a sacred site, I would say.
Okay,
Do you
for
want?
people who don't know geography, Montauk is the far end of Long Island in New York or off of New York. And so it is. Wait, I don't want to say if it's part of the Hamptons or not part of the Hamptons because I know that is a loaded statement, but you drive basically as far as you can on land in New York State, and the very end of it is a place called Montauk, and they have a brewery there. And we did go there when I visited after I ran the New York City Marathon this last fall. We did go to the brewery in Montauk, and we got to see Montauk, which was really fantastic and beautiful. And we had a couple beers, and I think that's where you made a big life decision.
I did make a big life decision. We have screenshots with timestamps, and about half a beer in, I signed up for an Ironman. And I think the most impressive part of all of that is that as a millennial, I did it on the small screen. Like that seems like a big screen laptop
You made a
situation.
big
And
purchase
I
on
made
your
a,
phone.
you know what? Apple Pay is really detrimental because Ironman is very expensive. And I was like, sure, no problem. Face ID, let's go.
It
Let's go.
happens. It happens. It's kind of how races are these days. You got to like sign up and then you figure out how you're going to do it later. But you did half a beer. I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm a bad influence on you, but maybe it's the alcohol. I don't know. We'll put this up for decision. But so you do have a beer. Okay. I do not have a beer. So today I have a grapefruit spindrift because I have this fancy glass that Megan, who I mentioned before, the original Eras Tour, met in person at the Eras Tour friend. She sent me this glass and it has a good like Life of a Showgirl Taylor Swift theme. And I just didn't want to put any non-clear liquid in here because it's so beautiful. So today we're doing spindrift in my fancy glass. I do feel like this podcast is becoming like a showcase for like glasses and mugs that people have given me. But this week we are doing Life of a Showgirl. Thank you, Megan, for
Oh, I love
cheers.
that. I love the
Cheers to
colors.
Spindrift.
Cheers. Wait, I really should
But
not be having this. I have a race tomorrow morning.
it's carbs. You're
It's
like
carbs. It's
carbo
carby
loading.
water.
Your coach
Yes.
said you could. But we'll talk about your race too. But before we do that, I have a little bit of housekeeping. And part of it does involve my good friend Megan Witt, who was also, if you haven't even listened to last week's show, Shelly mentioned Megan as one of the original Disney runners that we knew. And Megan was someone that like really inspired Shelly and I both to run at Disney. And she wasn't there with us this year, but you know, there's always hope for the future. But Megan had actually written into our unofficial mailbag. We don't have an official mailbag, but
I
you know,
love
if you know
that.
me well enough, you can text me, you can DM me, and I will do my best on this very casual podcast to answer it very casually. And Megan wanted to know about my marathon that the podcast I recorded last week, recorded it after the half marathon at the Dopey Challenge, which was 5K, 10K, half marathon on consecutive days at Disney World. Did a very ambitious podcast recording after the half marathon that I'm quite proud of. I did miss talking about the marathon, and the marathon went pretty well. I ran a 2:59. I placed second behind all-time Disney great Brittany Charbonneau. And I ran with the Pease brothers, Brent and Kyle from the Kyle Pease Foundation, and they ran under 3 hours for the first time. So it was a very, very good event for me. I dressed as a genie because it was fantasy themed. I actually ran the entire way with a gold spray painted lamp that I wish I had brought with me right now because I forgot to pull it out of the finish line. I wanted some kind of a prop at the finish line, but I was so psyched for Brent and Kyle breaking 3 hours that we just, forgot about that. But maybe another time. But Megan wanted to know how my marathon compared to like running an Ironman marathon. So running a marathon at the Dopey Challenge when you have run a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon on the 3 consecutive days. Wake ups. I also did go to the parks after the 5K and 10K, went to the pool after the half marathon. And so like she wanted to know how that compared to like an Ironman marathon when you are coming off a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then running a marathon. And my answer to that is that it is kind of a similar feeling. I feel like both times you are starting those races like very fatigued. Your legs are fatigued. Your legs are already sore. And so I think that that's one reason I've been able to do the Dopey Challenge, like, and make that transition, like, fairly comfortably is because I'm so used to running on tired legs because I have such a long history with Ironman. And that's also how I train. I do a lot. In the past, I would do a lot of runs on tired legs, runs late in the day. And so I will say physically, it is kind of a similar feeling. Those early miles feel really bad. And any triathlete knows that. Like when you come off the bike, usually that first mile, even a sprint, it feels pretty bad. So I'm used to feeling bad in the beginning. And then I'm like hopeful things will get better. And I think that is how Dopey felt. Like I was standing there in that corral being like, can I run a marathon? And I mean, every morning when I woke up, I was like, never again. And then of course a week later I'm like, okay, when's 2027 sign up? But so anyway, I think you have those kind of feelings, which when I have run a standalone marathon like New York City, I don't necessarily have that feeling as much. the first couple miles, you feel pretty fresh, and it's more about holding yourself back in those early miles. So it is similar in that way. Where it is very different is the time of day and the temperature. So even being in Florida, it's still 4:30 in the morning when we start, and so it was not nearly as hot as the average Ironman. I mean, the last Ironman I did was Ironman Hawaii, which was horrifically hot. I won't stop talking about it. It made me retire from the sport. That is just a different kind of challenge. And so the heat is so different. And so that doesn't happen at Dopey. Even on a really warm, humid morning, it's not Hawaii at 1 p.m. So I think that's like one of the biggest differences. And then probably like the caloric needs are a little bit different. I think in Ironman, you just need a lot more calories because you've been going for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours straight. And so you're trying to get in like as many calories as you can. And still, even with Dopey, even having done the previous days, I fueled very well. I got several plates of noodles from the China Pavilion at
That was my
Epcot.
question. If you were able, because those were big efforts. Like your 5 and your 10K, that was like a 12 out of 10 and your half. Like those were big efforts. Were you
They
able to
were
get in enough?
They were efforts beyond my training for sure. But no, I mean, Disney's a great place to eat. That was something that shocked me about Disney is that it is a great, great place to eat. And so I took part in that. And it's part of the joy of that, just going to and doing a race and then going and, eating around the World Showcase and sampling all the different treats. The only thing I do have to avoid is the popcorn, which I think Disney World is really known for that. And I did see some of it. It's really fancy, beautiful looking, but that will upset my stomach. So I draw the line at that. But I had lots of Mickey-shaped Rice Krispie treats, Mickey-shaped cookies.
Amazing.
Like I said, noodles at the China Pavilion. I had a filet one night, so
Good for you. You were living
I was well
large.
fueled. So, I mean, you still need to fuel a marathon, but it's not quite as critical as an Ironman. And there still was some pacing that was more involved in the standalone marathon, where you are kind of like, okay, let's try to hold this specific pace. I was very proud of how that marathon was paced. I think we did a very slight negative split versus Ironman is like trying not to slow down as much as possible. I mean, I wish I could just like pace it, but when it's that hot, it's more like resisting the urge to just die in the lava fields, which I successfully did. I made it back. So thank you to
You
Megan for that
did.
question. I have one other question that came through, and that was actually from my good friends that I ran with and my sister Brian and Ashley and my sister Hannah listened to last week's show, and they wanted to know about Jen, the athlete I mentioned warming up with for the half marathon. And she had these really ambitious plans to ride a couple Disney rides during the marathon. So shout out to Brian and Hannah actually did ride Everest during the marathon, the Everest roller coaster in Animal Kingdom, which again,
That's so cool.
I rode that ride as like standalone after the 5K and could not imagine running after it. Like you're just so disoriented when you come off of a roller coaster. I would need like several minutes of walking before I could even jog again. So kudos to them for like everyone who can hop on that roller coaster and then get right back into the race, because I think it comes around mile 17. So you still have quite a bit of running. So they did manage that ride. They wanted to know if Jen was able to ride. She had planned to ride the Avatar ride at Animal Kingdom and Rise of the Resistance, the Star Wars ride in Hollywood Studios. And I think how she was planning this was she actually had lightning lanes booked. So like she's able to get to the front of the line and coordinated with her husband. So it took like an extra level of logistics because these are long rides. They take a long time. She's also a very good runner, but you're still timing it right. And then to make the cutoffs. And then they're like quite off the race course. Like you're going to have to like walk because you aren't necessarily allowed to run off in Disney. I think that's against the etiquette. So you're going to have to like get us out the race course, walk quite a distance to this ride, do the ride, and then walk back and then continue on the race. I sent Jen a DM. I commented on her Instagram. I have not heard back. So that question is going to have to live for another day, but I appreciate the curiosity, and maybe we'll keep on Jen and be like, okay, inquisitive minds want to know, did you do it? I think it's like Jen runs 26.2 or something like that in Instagram, but
But
shout
either
out.
Either way, the logistics to map that out with your pacing and fueling strategy, like whether or not it happened, it probably took a very long time to plan it out anyway. So kudos to her because that's very
I think
impressive.
Disney is like the Super Bowl for people who love logistics.
Mhm.
Like,
Yes,
that
that's
is
true.
I'm
And
like, this is
happiness.
like yes, it's like, I mean, you get rewarded with incredible amounts of joy, but, like, you do need to love a certain amount of logistics or, like, you could do the parks different ways, but there is, like, an expert level where it's like, if you can
Definitely.
figure out these logistics, you get the expert level, you're gonna, like, whatever, defeat the final boss, and that might have been it. Like, Jen might have done it, but maybe not. Maybe
We'll
she's,
find
like, waiting
out.
on her lives to renew, but, well, stay tuned. Stay tuned on that, but thank you for those questions. And then my one other piece of housekeeping is you mentioned my previous show that was co-hosted with Alyssa Godesky, who is a fellow pro triathlete. And Alyssa had two pretty serious knee surgeries while we were recording. And just very, very early this morning, she finished the Spine Race, which is a 268-mile race through the winter in England. And she finished fourth woman in 119 hours. Wait, like how many days is that? All I know is that like I was on a group text that was Dot watching and tracking her. And like one, Alyssa, you have some incredible, incredible fans. Like watching the live stream, any glimpse, like celebrating all of it, like spreadsheets tracking her. But it's like for several days. What? I'm, like, coming over here being
Talk
like,
about
"Well."
logistics.
Okay, yes. I mean, Alyssa's like, "Okay, maybe that's final boss on logistics," but I am, like, over here being like, "I ran 48.6 miles." And then I'm like, "Oh, Alyssa's still going," and, like, 268, like, that's a lot of dopies.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Congratulations, Alyssa. And I hope, maybe we'll get her on the show, or else I think she'll probably be on some trail running podcasts, I'm sure, or venture racing podcasts. And make sure we give those a shout out because that's quite the feat and quite the comeback. To come from two knee surgeries to 268 miles, man. Congratulations. Okay. Okay. Now back to you, Sam. We're gonna put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Your history, and even when you approached me as an athlete, you told me I only like doing fast things and short distances, which I like to caveat this because in triathlon, a sprint distance typically takes more than an hour. I mean, it's involving usually a 400 to a 750-meter swim, a 12 to 15-mile bike, and usually around a 5K run. So like a sprint distance is pretty long. But you told me you're like, "I like going hard, that's it." And I think you also had some like worries about where that put you in the triathlon food chain.
That's a good way to put it. There was definitely part of me that was like, am I not a triathlete if I don't do a full distance? And I did a lot with the sprint distance. I would do multi-sport, which is my favorite week of the year. I describe it as finals week combined with sleepaway camp. You do, I guess, similar to Dopey, you do one or two races a day, sometimes two, for 4 or 5 days, and everybody's delirious. And you're hanging out with people who work for USA Triathlon. Vic is there doing all of it, the CEO of
Vic Brumfeld,
USAT,
who I
Brumfeld.
think actually ran maybe the Disney 10K because she was down there for endurance exchange. I'd
It's
heard rumors. I
yes,
did not see her, but I
yes.
heard rumors.
It's so much fun, and those are all really short. So in a way, I would describe myself as fit because I could do that, but there was still part of me that has this almost imposter syndrome for not doing the longer course. I went to Kona to cheer you on, and I saw Kona, and people were like, "You're gonna see Kona, and you're gonna wanna do a full distance." And I saw Kona, and I was like, "I'm never doing a full distance." And then 3 weeks later, I had half a beer at Montauk Brewery and signed up for a full. And they do say, right, like if you have a drink that shows what you really wanna do.
So, do you think that seeing Kona just needed to marinate a little bit? And then you got like, you were thinking, maybe I do want to do this.
I think that was part of it. I think we had signed up for a half in June, Western
Half
Mass,
Ironman,
half Ironman.
70.3.
And Yes. And I had done Chattanooga the year before, and I loved the training. I did not love that race. I just wasn't having my day, but I fell in love with the training over the winter. And I think I wasn't scared enough of signing up for Western Mass. I was like, yeah, I'll get my training in, but even if I don't, I can probably walk around a half marathon. And I think part of it was my brain needing to chew on something, like that client said all those years ago when I started taking swim lessons. I needed something to galvanize me to put this effort into my training. And I think that's where New Zealand came from. And the timing worked. The timing worked for my schedule. I didn't have enough time to waffle. It was like, you're either going to sign up today and we're going to change your programming today, or that's it for the season. And I think just being in the right place, trusting you implicitly, I think is really special. And I think that's why it's so important to trust your coach is when you said this is the right amount of time, I said, okay, but I also knew I could turn my brain off. I knew by trusting you, if I just follow the plan, I will be fine. I don't know what's going to happen between the start line and the finish line, but I know if I trust you, I will get to the start line, and I do. And so part of it was wanting to fit into that triathlon ecosystem. Part of it was wanting something new. And part of it was also just wanting to gain something from what I feel is a great coach client relationship.
Have you ever run a marathon? So this will be your first marathon. You have done a 100-mile bike ride before.
I have. I've done a couple of those, but they were charity rides. So it was very much like, here we go. We're going to stop. We're going to have lunch.
What about the swim? Have you ever swam 2.4 miles?
I have not. And I will say the swim was canceled for Chattanooga. And when I did the New York 70.3 Jones Beach, they shortened the swim because there was a hurricane coming in. So we'll find out if I can do it. I mean, my swims have been increasing in distance. It is freshwater, but it's also wetsuit legal. So we'll see what happens. And I'm excited because I'm a lefty for the bike because they're left-handed aid stations. That was another plus for doing New Zealand. And I don't know, we'll find out. You always say getting to the start line is really what you can control. So knock on wood, if everything goes according to plan, we will be in Topa in 50 days and we'll go to that start line and see what happens. And I'm excited to, I'm not racing it, right? I'm going to just complete it. And that also takes some pressure off. I do feel in these shorter sprints, especially in my local races, a lot of competition. And so to not have that competition there, I'm looking forward to it. I know for some people, they have a PR that they're trying to hit, or if you're a pro, obviously, I don't know anything about that except that it's a whole other animal. But I just want to complete it and see if I can do it. And so far, I'm actually loving the training. There hasn't been one day or one week where I've looked ahead and said, oh my God, I'm dreading this workout. It's more like, oh my God, I have a 4.5 hour bike ride. What can I go get from the bakery that I can eat on the bike? And what am I going to watch? And I'm actually really surprised at how evenly it's ramped up, that nothing has been too scary so far. And so I'm hoping that that like sense of calm and knowing that I've been able to tackle the training will get me between the start line and the finish line.
Right. So you do live in New York and it is winter in the Northern Hemisphere. And you have hit probably your longest swim. Have we hit your longest swim in this
So
training
far,
build?
yes.
Okay, so we're
Yes.
gonna hit your longest swim. We already have. So every time we go a little bit longer, we are getting close to that 3,800 meters of Ironman and making sure you're able to do that. And then not maybe longest bike ride by miles because you have done those charity centuries, but longest trainer ride sounds like 4.5 hours. Is that our longest so far?
So far, yes.
And it sounds like you watch Netflix or whatever streaming service, eat the bakery goods. Do you have any other tips for long trainer rides?
I mean, I don't recommend this because I've become completely addicted, but I am like patient zero for being addicted to one of those iPhone games, Royal Match. They advertised to me on Instagram. I downloaded it. I had to offload one of them because I was like seeing the patterns in my sleep. Like I could not, I was totally addicted. It's so
You're the
bad.
only person I know who's even ever done those,
Well,
but
they got me.
and
They
you did
got
it on
me.
the bike. Like,
I
while
do it on the
riding,
bike.
you're playing an Instagram game,
Well,
a
it is
phone
its own
game.
app, but a phone game. It's so bad. I had bought like a refurbished Game Boy a couple years ago. I started playing with that, but it wasn't enough like stimulation because I'm pretty sure, I think you explained to me these games and TikTok and all of that, those algorithms are modeled after the slot machines. So you want to feed into them. And it's so bad because I'll die and then they're like, "Oh, you're out of lives. You have to wait 20 minutes." I'm like, "I can't get through this interval without this." Other thing where Apple Pay is totally killing me. I'm like, sure, yeah, more lives. So
So you can just buy more lives and you don't
it's
have to wait
so
the 20
bad.
minutes.
It's so bad. Like, I consider myself
What is it with you people, though? I'm stimulated enough just by the actual bike ride. Why does
no,
everyone need to multitask?
because no. And it's awful too, because I know I'm playing into it. Like, I know for sure they're cutting my lives early because they know that I'll go buy more. I'm like, great, okay, no problem. So, I would say, as somebody who didn't work out, it's really becoming an expensive hobby of mine.
It's not just the
Games,
gear.
it's not just the gear, it's the game addiction, the bakery. The biggest surprise for me is it is an extraordinary amount of calories. I cannot get over how much I am eating and how much I'm spending on food and how my palate has changed, like what I'm craving and what I want.
Wait,
And
what are you craving now?
now I crave carbs.
And you didn't before.
I would crave protein. Like I was such a lifting bro. I would wake up in the morning and I would be like, can I go get a rotisserie chicken? I need it
And
right
now
now.
you want pancakes.
I want pancakes. I want waffles. I want pancakes in Bozeman, Montana specifically. I mean, I cannot stop eating. And it's out of a fear of being hungry. Like, I truly look at it. I'm looking at Training Peaks and I'm like, oh my God, if I don't eat more today, I cannot get through that 4.5 hour ride and a runoff. Like, I need to set myself up today. I need to recover from doing my longest swim and do that. And it's such a different and, in a way, I think, healthier way to approach nutrition and eating is this is truly fueling my recovery, what I'm doing. My needs are different, right? So my carb need is going to be very different doing this compared to when I was lifting a little bit more. And
Okay.
that's been a really big change, but I am really, really shocked at how much my palate has changed. And yeah, just that, because when you bonk, none of my workouts have been so far because we're building. If I do 5, 6, 7
Except for
Ironmans,
your longest run that you did with your
I had a
coach.
great Sherpa though for that one. I was hand fed licorice and
So
cookies on
we
that
did
one.
run 18 miles. I didn't know it was 18 miles. I haven't run with a watch since October, but I thought it was a little shorter than that. But when Sam was here in Bozeman, we did run 18 miles on some trails and yeah, we had lots there were enough carbs. We probably could have done a few more carbs. But yes, I try to make sure my athletes are well fed.
You did a great job. I was well fed, well hydrated. We just didn't know how far we were going to go. And also, I live literally at sea level. Like I can see the water from this room that I'm in right now. So Montana was a little bit of a change for both my lungs and the verticality of it. But the best part was I felt fine. We went out to dinner that night and then I got up and, was fine the next day. And I think that is also the biggest change. No one workout has left me completely crushed. And you've said that's part of Ironman training too. And it sounds like Dopey is like that as well. And I can't opine on what Alyssa just did last week and finish.
That's different level.
That's
That's a different level.
that's a whole other animal. But
We will let her have that niche. I think it is interesting. I feel like I am someone who loves being with people when they do their longest workouts. I think it's one of the dangers of meeting me. Because sometimes I just like have I get people in, but I mean, if I'm with someone, I'm never gonna leave them. I'm never, and I have a good sense for how much people can do. I feel like over the years, but it was fun. It was fun to see you do your longest run. And you mentioned your race tomorrow, which is also a run. Can you tell us about that?
yes, it is a 10 miler. It is one of 2 10-milers going on in the same town on the same day because of local run club drama. I know, kinda crazy.
It's a good
So
distance. I love the 10-mile distance.
so this will be my 3rd 10-miler, but my 2nd with this race event. There was another one, there was drama, and so this one I ran last year. You were my coach when I did that, and I was actually looking at my Strava, and I had almost perfect negative splits, and I was so proud of it, except between mile 5 and 6, where there was a positive split, because my friend and I doubled back to what would be considered in triathlon as outside assistance, but is not in a running race, to the woman who set up a card table of fireball shots outside of her house. And so we doubled back, we took the shots of fireball. Yes, I'm a health and fitness coach, and then I negative split from there. So I have a very specific time goal this year, so we'll see if I can do it. And
Wait, do the time goal or do the time goal with a fireball shot?
oh,
Are we
both,
gonna
both. Oh, we're
if
definitely
that
doing the
woman is
fireball
out there,
shot.
you're gonna do it again.
Absolutely. Especially
It's
because I
January.
will it's January. No matter what the weather is, I will be in shorts and a sports bra because I am always a million degrees when I run. So it might be freezing rain tomorrow, so that fireball shot will feel great. And I get very nervous for triathlon. I do not get nervous for running races because I feel like I'm almost like the weird step cousin or something, like I'm running adjacent. So I go to running races just genuinely curious. And I'm like, can I get these gels down? Can I run faster than I did last time? What does it feel like to run in socks? So I guess I'm excited. I laid out shorts and a sports bra. It's very different than packing for a triathlon, and we'll see what happens.
We'll have to get an update on yours for next week's housekeeping. But I am curious though, when you talk about like feeling the imposter syndrome at triathlons, if you aren't doing Ironman, which is kind of considered the longest standardized distance, do you feel that at running races? If you're at a 10-miler, do you feel like you aren't a real runner if you don't run a full marathon?
No, isn't that strange? But I think I'm in a completely different bucket. So it's almost like I don't even subscribe to those ideas of being a real runner because I don't see myself as a runner. I see myself as somebody who tries to get this jigsaw puzzle of 3 different sports together. And so I feel like now I'm just doing a very long catered training day in anticipation of a triathlon that I will have somewhere down the road.
I mean, it's interesting. Maybe that is it. Maybe I just always see myself as a swimmer. And so once I get past like 200 meters, I'm like, I'm good. I'm legit. So, it's an interesting psychology. I think I don't subscribe to that. Obviously, I believe sprint triathlons are very hard. I just ran a 5K. It was so hard. My 10K crushed my soul.
Do
I
you
mean,
wait,
even though I
do
can
you see
also
your
run a marathon.
do you see yourself as a triathlete or a runner or a swimmer in
Oh,
your
I see
retired
myself
life?
as retired. I am a triathlete, of course. I did so many Ironmans. I have a podcast that's mostly about triathlete. I see myself as an endurance athlete now, I think. I enjoy just endurance sports, which I think I'm not going to go do it. I still may see myself as a swimmer, but I have no interest in going to a swim meet and doing a 400 IM. I would get DQ'd. I can't do half the strokes anymore. And but I think growing up, I see myself as a swimmer first, I think, and then endurance athlete. So I'll always be a triathlete. I think we all are. And any distance you've done, super sprint, I will fight anyone who says you are not a triathlete unless you've done Ironman. But I will support anyone who does want to do Ironman. I think that the longer races do teach us about ourselves. I think that they are a great challenge. And I do think you go through a lot of psychological things getting to the start line and then also getting to the finish that can help you in other ways in life. But one person's Ironman can be another person's sprint. Like I said, a sprint in our race it's so long, so long.
Do you
As someone who grew up like thinking of 50 free was a sprint, you go 20 seconds to go to 20 seconds compared to an hour is quite a different event.
do you see yourself doing any age group tries?
Probably not Ironman, but again, it's only been 3 months, so we'll see. I feel like very fulfilled with the Ironman distance and the accomplishments I have there, and I also have certain standards for myself and to do what I want to do in Ironman, I would have to train so much, and I don't think I necessarily want to do that kind of training, especially on the bike, as much anymore. And so I have other goals that I think I couldn't necessarily pursue when I was full-time pro racing just because you have to be like so single-minded to compete at the pro level. But yeah, I mean, never say never. I could see myself maybe if there was an interesting race in an interesting location, I could see myself doing a race. I do think there are some shorter races that I would find very fun. I didn't race many short races as a professional just because of how prize money is structured, to be perfectly honest. I think I could have actually been probably better at shorter races, but there are some shorter races that I think I would love to like be a part of those communities. I think I've talked about there's a series here in Bozeman that averages, I think I've heard there's about 15 people in every race. And so I'm like, that is my jam. I mean, I know I love Disney and it's so hard to sign up for those races, but I love the idea of a race that you could just like sign up race morning, if I feel like it, I go do it. Like
I
that kind of
love
thing.
that.
So I'm just in a different headspace right now. So never say never, things might change. It's only been 3 or so months for me. And it is very fun that there's so many different aspects of endurance sports and that I can feel like I can use some of my skills from endurance sports. And then also I love living vicariously through my athletes. I think that helped me feel like the skills I developed over the last 12 or so years were somewhat useful. So I'm thankful for that. And Sam, we touched on your personal training business, and this is a time of year when a lot of athletes are hitting the gym. A lot of people are hitting the gym. The gym is very in vogue these days, I am told. I mean, I love the gym, and it sometimes seems more crowded. I don't know if it's the time of year or if it's just like hitting the gym is popular, but being strong is cool. It should be popular. It is very, very fun. And it's something that I hope to continue for the rest of my life. So before this chat, I did ask if you could share your 3 favorite exercises for an endurance athlete, a triathlete this time of year, things that people could hopefully easily do in their gym, maybe in their house-sized home gym if they don't have a personal trainer on hand, or, in their living room of their condo with all their animals. That's their situation.
So many animals. Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like the gym has been really crowded, but like not even after the new year, just in general, people are lifting and a lot of women are lifting, which I love. That's like my first love is teaching women how to lift. But the first exercise, I think a lot of people know it. It's just a core exercise called a dead bug, where you're on your back and your arms and legs are up. And if your right arm is going back, your left leg is going forward. So you're opening up. And the slower you go, the slower you open up that eccentric, the more you're going to build that muscle. If you think about like doing a bicep curl, going like this is much harder than going like that. And the reason that the arms and legs are going to go opposite is that's how we move, right? That's how we walk, that's how we run, that's how you swim. You can do that with weights. I love putting hand weights in clients' hands and doing it, or having all 4 limbs open up at the same time. So that's all you need to do is lay down. You just need a mat for that.
Okay, so for those people who are listening and maybe couldn't see you and aren't watching the YouTube, just as a refresher, so like when you say this opening up, so the eccentric part is what is the eccentric part? Can you like describe
So,
it in
yeah,
words?
so that is when you are lengthening the lever. So if you think about moving away from your body, is the easiest way to think about it. So if you are
So that part should be
just use
slow.
very slow, very
Okay.
slow, because that's where you are getting more time under tension and you're really sort of ripping those muscle fibers apart that are going to allow them to rebuild.
Okay.
So for a dead bug, it would be as you're moving away from the midline of your body. You're
Okay.
going, you're opening up your footprint, your arm print.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So we'll make sure people are moving slow. Should you do anything with your breathing? Is it matter?
I think people overcomplicate this, and this is a very big Pilates and yoga thing when you breathe. I would just breathe out as you are going on your eccentric. So as you're moving away, breathe out and breathe in for the concentric or the actual repetition part that you would think of. But people love to overcomplicate things. And there's a lot of stuff. This is just my plug for a lot of stuff that's on Instagram and TikTok right now, and challenges and things you need to do. The simpler the exercise is, the more effective it probably is. Just something else to keep in mind.
Okay. With that, let's move on to exercise number 2.
Okay, exercise number 2 is a kickstand deadlift. So a deadlift is a hip hinge. That is where you sort of fold at the hips. If you think about keeping your back, your spine nice and tall, I describe this to clients as trying to shut the car door with your butt if you are holding a bunch of groceries and you want to close the door behind you. It's a great exercise for the posterior chain. So that's anything behind you. So that is for your glutes, your hamstrings, your spinal erectors, all of these things that we use when we swim, bike, and run, but we oftentimes undertrain because we can't see them. So a kickstand deadlift is a variation of a single leg deadlift. So if you think of a single leg deadlift, that also becomes a balancing exercise, which is super important for triathlon. But oftentimes the weight can be the limiting factor for that. If your balance isn't that great, you're not going to be able to lift that heavy, so you can't get as much strength training through that exercise. With a kickstand deadlift, you still keep it as unilateral, but if you step 1 foot back, so you start with your feet parallel, you step 1 foot back, and you stay on the toe of that back foot. So you have just a little kickstand that you can balance on, and that helps you just work one leg, but it takes out a lot of that balance portion of it, so you can lift a little bit heavier. And you can do that with a dumbbell, with a kettlebell, with honestly whatever you have in the house that weighs a little bit, weighs anything. You can do it with a landmine. There's plenty of different ways to do it, but just keeping the toes down for that helps.
Wait, I needed a landmine. You mean like the bar that's connected at one at one
Yes,
end?
yes, yes.
Okay, we gotta like make sure that
Not
our
an
audience.
incendiary device, but
Okay.
a type of barbell that is affixed to a point,
Okay.
oftentimes in a squat rack.
I'm curious how many reps, like how many reps and how many rounds of each of these 2 exercises we've talked about so far.
So I love to use RPE. And so for most clients, I say having 2 reps in reserve is probably the best. And so I love, if you're just new to lifting, you're going to need to get the reps in. So you want at least 8, 10, 12 per side because you need to teach your body how to do that movement, just like you would with anything else. You need to get all that practice in. 3 or 4 sets is what I would say. A standard is 3 by 10, but you can play around with that.
Okay. And okay, last exercise for this segment of our podcast.
Yes. Okay. So this one is a variation of a side step up that I absolutely love. So if you imagine that you are standing parallel to a bench, instead of doing just a step up, so if you're standing, your right leg is closest to the bench, normally you would step up with that right leg. This is a little bit different. You actually take your left leg and you cross it over the front. So the outside leg crosses over. And the reason I really like this for runners and triathletes is that you can feel your glute med activating. And your glute med is basically the side of your butt. It's a very tiny little muscle, but if it's underactive, your knees are going to cave in. You're going to be in what we call valgus. You're going to have a lot of hip, knee, and ankle pain if that muscle is not strengthened. And I'm sure you see this with your athletes too. I know you love clamshells and side leg raises, things like that. That's working that same muscle. So with this, you cross one leg over. So we'll have videos on YouTube, but if you can follow my cueing, it would be the outside leg crosses over. And you can really feel as soon as you do that, the outside of the hip starts to activate and fire. And you also get a little bit of a cardio boost from this because just that act of going vertically helps as well. And it takes you out of what we call the sagittal plane, which is what we're running and biking in all the time. That front and back motion gets a little bit of the side to side motion as well. So those are like my 3 standards, I'd say, for most of my clients if they're doing endurance sport. And every client does dead bugs because I think they're probably the greatest core exercise ever.
Quite the endorsement. I'm excited to get to the gym, try these out, and I appreciate you sharing some knowledge with our
Of course.
listener.
A
We might
listener,
have a
our single
couple.
listener. Wait, but you had 2 mailbag questions, so we at least have 2.
Okay. Okay, I might be exaggerating. We do have at least 2. But thank you to everyone who has listened to our first couple episodes so far. And it's been a pleasure getting to chat with you, Sam. And good luck in your 10 miler tomorrow. We can't wait to hear about it and the rest of your training toward your first Ironman in New Zealand coming up in March.
So